What up, YouTube? Thursday afternoon, heading back home from a pretty short session. Was editing some videos earlier today. Another mistake, as I had mentioned, because I should be getting there early. Didn't get in till like afternoon, then took a while to get in the game again. Got some really fun and interesting hands to get into, so let's get into them. Pretty early on in the session, I have ace-6 offsuit in the big blind. There is a post from a new player that just got moved to our game, and he makes it 15 from his post. It folds to the small blind. It was an action player. He calls, and I contemplating just making a big 3-bet here because I think the small blind is calling fairly wide. The open to 15 by the poster doesn't have to be strong at all. I think it's very likely that he's just kind of doing this with any two cards that he wants to play and doesn't want to just check out of his post and then get possibly raised. But I decide not to. Unfortunately for me, the flop ends up coming like ace-9. It's queen-jack versus jack-9. Turn is a queen, and so the queen-jack now turns jack-9, and the river's an ace, and I would have ended up making quads against these two players who ended up putting a fair amount of money in post-flop with the flop 9 and the turned queen. So now about an orbit later, I get ace-10 of diamonds in, I think, the small blind. There is an under-the-gun limp. The player from before opened to 15 now opens to 20. This is a spot where I'll sometimes 3-bet just because I don't think this hand plays that great out of position. And, at the same time, because it is suited, I don't mind going multi-way with it. I like not to 3-bet under-the-gun calls. We go 3 ways to a flop of 3, 6, 7 with 2 diamonds. As of late, I've been mixing in some donk leads in these situations with like nutted hands as well as big draws. I like to lead again for 40. Under the gun makes it 120, folds back to me. He's only playing like 500, so I don't think I have much of a choice here. I don't want to really just call and then now go to a brick turn out of position. So I end up jamming, kind of hoping that he can sometimes have some worse flush draws, obviously, or some hands like 8s, 9s, 10s that might fold. He ends up having bottom set and snaps it off. Turns a brick, river's a 10. So chances are if I had 3-bet the original raiser, the pocket 3s folds, and obviously I don't end up losing this pot. Bit of results oriented, but I think I still actually like 3-betting here with this hand against this particular opponent. Seeing that he opened queen-jack earlier, I think he's just possibly opening like one too many hands. So there's no reason that I shouldn't be possibly 3-betting this out of the blinds for value. So I lose that hand. At this point, I think I'm stuck around maybe like $500. I was up a little bit before that. After that hand, there is a limp under the gun from the aforementioned player who opened to 20. Given that he limps under the gun here, I think that he's going to be doing this fairly wide. He's been opening a few hands, so if he's limping this hand, chances are it's not very good. I get 10-8 off in, I think, either on the button or on the cutoff. I make it 25. The player who just doubled through me with the pocket 3s calls in the blinds. The limper folds. We go heads up to a flop of 7-7-3 with 2 clubs. He checks, and now I bet 40. He check calls. The turn is an offsuit 9, so I'm open-ended now. He checks. Given that I picked up equity, I'm going to be barreling here. I bet 110. He calls fairly quickly. At this point, I feel like he could have some draws or possibly some pocket pairs that are trying to get me to slow down. I'm thinking of, barreling some bricked rivers, possibly representing flushes. Obviously, if I hit my straight, that would be the gin. The river is the 6 of clubs, making my straight, but it also completes the flush. He checks, and I decided to bet 260. I think this is a little too large. I should probably be targeting some of his weaker hands. I think by betting this large, I might be just targeting exactly like flush draws. Obviously, I think checking back here is too weak, even though I do think he has flush draws here a decent percentage of the time. I didn't want to bet small in case I get raised because that'd be pretty gross. Not that I think this player would ever be bluffing, so betting probably something more value like half pot's better so I can get called by some of his weaker hands. He ends up snap calling. He has ace-9 of clubs for flop nut flush draw, turned 9, and then rivering the nut flush on a paired board. So that one was pretty unfortunate. I think if the river's a brick, is he calling a bomb? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not really sure. Then we play a hand where there is a reg who opens to 15. I make it 45 in the cutoff with ace-jack offsuit. The flop comes queen-9-9. He check calls 40. He's playing about 400, and my plan here is to go 3 streets because I think he's just not going to have a big enough hand. He calls 40. The turn now is like an offsuit 7. He checks, and I bet 110, and he snap calls me. When he does this, I know he's just trying to get me to kind of stop betting. He's got about 300 left. The river is like some brick. I think it's like a deuce. He checks. He had just been seated at this table, so I don't think he's seen how many pots I've lost already. So I think that's kind of to my advantage. I don't think I'm ever pulling off this move against any of the other players at the table who have seen me essentially lose every single pot that I've played. So I end up putting him all in. He tanks for a while and ends up folding. Obviously, I think that in this spot, he's going to have a lot of times like queen, jack, king, queen, things of that nature, and just figures that I'm not going to be going 3 streets here with worse. Little did he know that we were on monkey tilt. In this next hand, I'm in the big blind with 4-3 of diamonds. There's a bunch of limpers, and now the small blind makes it 20, which is a really small raise out of the blinds. Obviously, as we know, I'm not a fan of folded suited connectors, especially when we're deep. I call 15 more, and we go 4 ways to a flop of ace, deuce, 10 with 2 diamonds. The pre-flop raiser checks. When he checks here, I think he's just not going to have an ace very often. Obviously, I flop a fairly large draw with a gut shot and a flush draw, so I decided to take the betting action. I bet 50 into the $80 pot. Both of the limpers who limp called fold, and now he calls. When he calls here, I think he's going to be pretty capped to having some like pocket pairs, maybe hands like ace 10, ace jack, things of that nature. So when the turn comes an offsuit 8, I decide I'm going to continue barreling. He checks, and I bet 110, and he calls fairly quickly. When he calls his bet fairly quickly again, it feels like he's just going to have some hand like ace 10, ace jack, ace queen, maybe ace king, playing it deceptively. There's just not too many people you see play it in this manner. So when the river comes the king of diamonds, in my mind this is Jin making the flush. I'm hoping at this point that he has a hand like ace king, ace queen that isn't going to fold, possibly pocket kings that got stubborn, and now river to set. He checks, and I bet $350 for value, looking to just, get called by the hands that I think he is most likely to have. He goes into the tank, and then he makes it $800. Puke, essentially like a min raise. I had just seen this guy hero fold 2 pair where there was only like 1 straight, and he's just like, that guy definitely had a straight. And so I just feel like there's no way ever this guy doesn't have exactly the nuts. In my mind, given what the river is, it's probably exactly ace queen of diamonds, which makes a ton of sense because when he raises out of the blinds and then flops this flop, I can see why he's, kind of going into check call mode. He essentially has the nuts, like there's no point in him bleeding. So he obviously could be setting a trap for me. I tank, and then he ends up doing something where he's like, oh, you're obviously folding, and he kind of goes to push his cards to the muck. I've never seen anybody do this before and be bluffing. I muck, and he ends up saying something like, do you want to see it or whatever? And he shows ace 5 of diamonds, which is pretty surprising to me that he has ace 5 of diamonds, because I wouldn't expect this hand to be opening out of the blinds. But, similar concept to him having ace queen of diamonds. I see how he played, why he played it the way he did. Figures he's obviously going to be either way ahead or way behind on this type of flop. So obviously he got me kind of for the maximum. Not much I can do there. I think obviously one of the issues with playing a hand like 4-3 of diamonds against somebody who's quite likely to have ace-x of diamonds. Obviously at this point, this isn't necessarily like a standard call I'm making out of the blinds, but it is a call I'm making fairly often against players who are deep. It's just unfortunate. I think I kind of ran into it in this spot. So at this point, I decide to switch tables. Nothing's been going right. Obviously, everybody thinks I'm bluffing my buns off, so I just need to get out of here. Not to mention, the game's just not that great. So I got a bunch of guys who are clearly trying to win, and I do not like playing with people who are trying to win at poker. So I switch tables, and when I switch tables, we get into one last final interesting spot. It folds to the small blind. I'm in the big blind, and it's a reg who I'm fairly familiar with. I forgot that he doesn't chop. So when I ask him if he chops, he's like, no, I don't chop. He limps. I have Jack 9 offsuit in the straddle. They, like I've mentioned before, they take $6 immediately. So there's just no way I'm checking my option here. I want to be playing for a bigger pot in position. I'm not going to check and then, play for like a $5 pot that makes 0 sense. So I make it 25, and he's like, I knew you were going to do that. And he calls. Flop comes 8-7 deuce rainbow. He checks. I bet 40 into like 45 after the rake's taken out, and now he makes it like 120. He's playing, I think, like 733, including the bet. And so at this point, like, there's just no way I'm folding the nut gut shot. I don't really love calling. Obviously, though I am in position, I think I'm obviously going to break here on the turn a ton. And then now if he bets something like 250, it kind of puts me in an awkward spot. So I think the best course of action here is drawing to the nuts. If I want to play this aggressively, is to just rip it in. I think it puts him in a tough spot to like all of his non-2 pair plus holdings. So I jam it in, and he snap calls, and he's like, I got a set. I'm like, all right. He's like, yeah, you're probably drawing live. The turn's a jack, so obviously if I get to the turn, there's not much I'm doing anyway. I'm probably not folding the flop. When I turn a jack for top pair, I'm just not going to fold. And the river is the oh so beautiful 10. So we drill it. Pretty gross hand for this specific player. It's a guy I know. He's a really nice guy, cool guy. Unfortunate that it was against him that I did get there, especially given the hand that he plays right after this. He picks up pocket aces on the button, and I think there's a bunch of limpers in a straddle pot. He kind of like slams in a raise. It's kind of look like he's tilting. He has pocket aces. I think the flop comes like, I'm not exactly sure of the exact action, but I think the flop's like ace 3-5, something like that. Turns a 3, so he makes a boat. They get it in on the turn. I don't think he had that much money at this point. He says to the dealer as a joke, he's like, yeah, see if you can F this one up. The river, I think, is the 7 of spades. The other player who's all in against him says something kind of like, do you want to pull more money out of your pocket? He ends up having 4-6 of spades for, I think, either making runner or like backdooring or possibly a flopped straight flush draw. Anyway, he makes a straight flush against the aces full, which is absolutely gross. Pretty brutal 2 hands for this guy. Anyway, I think at peak I was stuck like 1,700. When I got moved, I built it back up a little bit, was stuck 1,000, and then won that big pot for like 1,500 against that guy with the gut shot. So that was obviously really nice. I did get it in a bunch with equity, so it was nice to finally hit in one. Obviously, one that I had the least amount of equity in, but finally got there against the set. Ended up stuck, I think, minimum like 200. Lost a little bit before I left, so we left stuck like a $330 loser. Feels like a win after being stuck 1,700. Obviously, I was playing like a pretty big monkey, splashing around, but that's who we are. That's what we do on this channel. We are headed to my wife's family for the weekend to celebrate Mother's Day, so this is probably going to be my last session for the week. Pretty good week, even though I think I only played like 3 days. Ended up winning around like 1,500 or 2K for the week, somewhere in that vicinity. Anyway, thanks for checking out the videos, guys, and we'll catch you later.